And here it is. Welcome once again to yet another episode of the fun and exciting Get Found.
And be seen.
That's right. Because as busy solopreneurs, that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
That's
Because
it.
without being found and getting seen, or getting found and being seen, you're not in front of people. So there you go.
There you
And
go.
it's another great Monday, a Monty Monday. I've just got back from a vacation, which wasn't really a vacation. I did a whole
Buildcation.
bunch of manual labor. And that's where the whole mapping things out came from. Because I've been mapping things out in my business, and I had to kind of put that on hold and take care of a personal situation. And I found that I was mapping things out to get through that situation.
Nice. Did you mind map it?
No, I didn't have time to mind map it. It was a physical scenario going on in my yard. And, well, I suppose I could have had time to mind map it. But what I needed in this situation was mapping out the physical layout. But let's back up before I get into that. First of all, the misconception about mapping it out. Mapping it out oftentimes brings the vision of having the map that shows you everything, answers all your questions, gives you all the right routes to take.
Yeah.
But that's the map. If we could have the map, if we could have a owner's manual for kids, if we could have an owner's manual for relationships, there's a lot of stuff that we'd like to have, but
well,
the map doesn't truly exist, because even if you have a really good state map and you're traveling, there's construction, there's detours, there's flash floods, there's car wrecks, there's all sorts of things that can change the route you have to take. And that's where mapping things out comes into effect. And it's a recurring, developing concept. Because you can map things out as far as you want to go.
right.
Somewhere along the way, you may find yourself remapping. So there's this interesting balance in, you don't want to invest too much and map too far and too deeply, because then you are not ready to pivot and change your plans as easily. Some people are better at it than others. I myself, if I have things mapped out too strictly and life says, no, you can't do it that way, I'll falter. I'll have some issues and struggle with that. So the mapping out for me is, okay, I'd like things to go like this. What if I did it like this? What if I did it like that? What if this happened? What if that happened? And there's this dance going on there.
The dance.
I thought you'd like that analogy there.
So I like that word. I like that analogy. And what I love about what you said too is, with a map, there's room to have options of multiple scenarios. It kind of reminds me of that Avengers. Was it Avengers Infinity War, I think it was. Where you ever see that movie? It's when Doctor Strange is, we're giving a spoiler, but by now you should have seen it. I'm just kidding. Doctor Strange is thinking about all the scenarios and how to defeat Thanos, right? And that was a cool thing. He was able to, there was a lot of scenarios, but he was able to think it through, map it out, so to speak.
And that's that. You got to be careful. He had superpowers, so he was able to do that. Whereas I and probably most of the people listening do not. And this is where the danger of overthinking comes in. Because if you want to try and map it out, what if every possibility, then you could spend far too much time, overthink, procrastinate, and never move forward. Mapping it out is supposed to help you move forward, because the idea is there's so many options. Which one do I choose? How do I move forward? So mapping it out is the narrowing it down strategy. So let's put that in real life. Let's have a real map in front of us. And I want to get from here to there. I want to go from where I'm at now to the Grand Canyon. Okay, well, there's this interstate. This is this main route like this, and there's this other secondary route like this. And then there's all these little smaller routes. And the smaller routes are going to take us more time. And we want to get there quicker than that. So that kind of narrows it down. It's either the main freeway or the secondary route. Now, if we take the secondary route, we can go by this place and this place, but it'll take us this much longer. But if we go the main route, we'll get there this much quicker. All right. So they'll make a decision and you start going. Now, I'm gonna analogy this later with my project in my yard, but in this anecdote, you chose one of those two options and you start going down. Let's say you chose a secondary route. Let's go ahead and take a little extra time and stop at these places. And you get to the first place and it's closed. So it's like, okay, well, is there anything else in the close proximity that we can fill in this time, or should we just head on forward, map that part out? So we're just mapping out little chunks. We have the big idea, but we're just going to map out little chunks rather than mapping out the whole entire thing.
Right. Makes sense. Chunking.
Chunking. Yeah,
I heard a coach say that. Chunking. He used it in a different scenario, but I like that word, chunking.
Well, it applies to a bunch of things. How to eat an elephant, in one bite at a time, in chunks.
Right.
So let me now put that towards the analogy of what I was doing. I was fixing a fence, and every step of the way I was mapping out and then discovering I couldn't do the entire map. So that's where I was mapping out each step. I want to do it this way. I want to go here. But to get here, I was encountering those roadblocks, the construction, the accident, something of that nature, but in a fence terms. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to put up new boards. That was my original plan. Ivy's going through the boards. I want to put up new boards. I'm going to put some landscaping black fabric up and then put the boards up to keep the ivy from growing through. Easy peasy. So I start tearing off some boards. Oh, there's some ground down here. I can't leave this bottom board by itself. Okay, that's all right. I've got some blocks, concrete blocks. I'm just going to put one row of concrete blocks along the bottom to help support this board. Put up these fence boards, put up the black fabric, put up the fence boards, be done. All right. So I start digging out to get the one line of blocks, and I get down to the end, and the support beam, the post, the 4x4 post that's sunk into the ground, is rotted at the ground and is broke off. And the board that's connected to it, that runs across, that all the fence boards are connected to, is broke off of the 4x4. It's in 3 different pieces. Okay. Well, I've already mapped out. I've got these first row of bricks. I'll just put a second and third row of bricks and extend this all the way over and sink a new post. Oh, well, I get part way and it's like, oh, there's another post from the other property on the other side that their concrete area around their post is so large it protrudes into my area and I can't put my row of blocks. All right, let me map that out. If I can't put a block there, what can I do instead? And what if I did this? What if I did that? What if I got some concrete? What I would need to do? And I figured out I'll just take these paver stones and set them in place so what you see visually is the same thing, but it's empty behind it instead of being an entire block. and I filled it in with concrete. And then I put blocks on top of that, and you can't tell. Inside, it's different, but the outside is this. It looks all the same. So here I've started out with this journey of I just want to put up fence posts. And I've now removed a whole bunch of rotting material, removed a whole bunch of dirt that shouldn't be there, placed in a whole bunch of concrete blocks instead of wood. And I haven't even gotten to the point of putting up the fence yet, which is where I was mapped out to go in the first place. And it took me 4 different sessions of mapping it out to get past all those various hurdles without just, being stuck or allowing the problem to push things off beyond my time frame, because I only had a set amount of time to invest before I needed to get back here. So I took all of last week off to take care of that.
Yeah. Cool. So you had to work you had to kind of dive into the foundational stuff that kind of expanded a little bit.
And there's if you want to make that analogy there, foundational stuff. I needed a foundation for the fence, and I used foundation blocks. But even placing the foundation, it's like, hey, I wanted to do it like this. I mapped it out. This is what's going to work, really well. It's doable. It's actionable. I have the resources. All right, putting plan of action into motion. And then there's that, but I can't do it the way I had it all mapped out. I got part way. And if I could get past this thing, I could continue with the rest of the map. Although then I've encountered other stuff, but that's further in the story. There's always something.
Always, right?
Always something. And that's where these chunks, I like that. I might just adopt that. These chunks of mapping it out, these segments, these, I don't know, I'll have to come into where the mapping term, these regions.
Right.
Regions. But there's just this, again, wrapping it back around to the misconception of mapping it out. And people think that you have, that means you've mapped all the way out to the goal. Every step of the way. It's all mapped out. There's no questions. Right. If something comes up, you already know the answer. And that's just not necessarily true.
Yep.
If it is, that's awesome. I mean, once in a while, that's happened for me. I'd like it to go like this. If I had my way, it would go like this. And it did. Right. Holy moly. Not very often, though. Typically, there's always, I'd like it to go like this, but someone else would like it to go a little differently. And then there has to be a little bit of compromise or something.
Right. Interesting how that happens. But it's true. Yeah, that's on point.
And then to apply that to the business. So recently, I was not intending to analyze the tools I was using and go through this mapping it out process with a particular tool. But something appeared in my radar. And so I said, well, let me map that out. What if I use this tool instead of the tool I'm using? And typically, if a tool I'm using works, I don't want to spend any time into, is something else going to work better? And so it's like, well, all right. I don't know what it was that really sparked me into looking at it, but I started mapping out this new tool as compared to Zoom, and started saying, okay, well, what do I use this for? Map out Zoom. Here's the features I use. Here's the conveniences that I like. Here's the main reasons why I use the tool. And then let's map out this new tool. And same deal. It's like, what features would I use on it? And are there features that I would use instead of Zoom? Or are there features that it has that are different than Zoom. And as I mapped that out, I started seeing the two routes and how much easier one was than the other.
Yeah.
So not only a mapping out like what am I going to do, but mapping out what am I doing? And then mapping out what if I did this, what if I did that? And again, easy to overthink. So
Yeah.
I that's where I go into threes. I typically try to narrow things down to threes and then do the deep dive on just those three.
It's pretty cool. That's smart. That's strategic.
Yeah, that's
Didn't know.
the main
Yeah.
point. Strategy, critical thinking,
Yeah.
and not overthinking. Critical thinking and not overthinking.
That's something cool you could put in there. That's like a rule of 3 that you have when building. That's really helpful because people, like the overwhelmed solopreneur, if they're trying to build or if they're trying to get something done, if you could give them that framework or have a framework for them with that would be super helpful. Because everyone, like you mentioned, it's easy to think you got to have it all planned out, all done. All right. And then, when that happens, it's easy to overthink and then you get paralyzed and do nothing, like you alluded to before. But that's a big deal. That rule of 3, for lack of better words.
Yeah, till I can find something snifty to name it. But yeah, I think that is the framework. Since you called it out, and I hadn't really like mapped that out. So that it would be a cool thing to map out. Is say, the whole, because that's great. Let me talk about that for a second.
Yeah,
looking
please
at
do.
My physical project in front of me, it was what ways could I use, what ways could happen, and narrow that down to the 3 or 2 best options, and then get out the measuring tape and measure those options. See, there's the thing. There's the good analogy. I didn't have time to get out the measuring tape and measure every single option. Or I didn't want to invest the time. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
I chose not to invest the time into measuring out every single option because I could look at every option and some of them determine if I did that, it would mean more work down the road.
Right.
So I don't want to go that way because that's just increasing my workload. So, such as I could use these other blocks. I could get something different than what I already have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go through that effort. So that option is now invalid.
Yeah.
Narrow those down.
Right. I love that. And I think one benefit I think of too, Monty, which is a big deal, especially for the solopreneur. I know for me, sometimes I'm getting something done and I have things mapped out and then I hit this point, I get stuck. And I get stuck because of my brain power. So when this whole simplification, this whatever we call it, that's a big deal for a solopreneur because they could even map that out, for lack of better words, and that increases their productivity as a solopreneur.
Yeah, I experienced that same thing. I was talking to a couple of different people recently that kind of mentioned the same type of thing. I get to this certain thing. It's different for different people, but I get to this certain point and then it gets foggy. Everything was clear and I get to this point and suddenly everything's foggy or it's just not as clear. There's suddenly I'm not sure and there's hesitation or different people described it different ways, but it boiled down to I was taking action and suddenly I wasn't because I wasn't sure where to go, what to do and how to go about it.
Right. That's a big one.
And I've encountered that many times. And that's where I keep striving on this simplification strategy on how to overcome that feeling of, for lack of better words, because it keeps getting used so much, but overwhelm.
Yeah.
And or just the big fog. I think that a couple people have said that, and it fits for me too, saying it's like suddenly it's this fog. What am I doing? I got all this stuff going on. And that's when it's super powerful to be able to just start saying, okay, well, this doesn't matter right now. I need to get some more boards. I need to get some more concrete. I need to move these blocks, and I need to dig out the place where the blocks are going to go. It's like, well, I just mapped out what I needed to do actually by saying that, because I can't put the boards up because there's nowhere to attach them to. I need to get the wood, but I can't put the wood up because there's no foundation for it to be on, which needs concrete. There's no sense going and getting the concrete because the blocks aren't in place to put the concrete into. So right there, I got all these things I need to do, but really the only thing that's important is digging out the place for the blocks to be and putting the blocks in place. Until that's done, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Although then, a little bit later, the sun moved, and it was just glaring down on my workspace. And I was like, I can't survive in this heat right here working. So let me go get the concrete. Even though I'm not ready to pour it yet, since I'm unable to work effectively, on the point that I wanted to work on, there's that pivot. All right, I'll go grab the concrete. When I come back, hopefully the sun will have moved some, or maybe I'll put up a sunshade. I don't know, but there was that mapping it out. I wanted to do it this way. I had even mapped it out a second time, and that's the way I was going to do it. And then the sun, of all things, because it had been overcast, so it wasn't part of my factoring into anything. I'm like, there's no problem. And then suddenly it cleared off. It's a beautiful day, which was also distracting. Oh, I want to go do some fun stuff in the sunshine, not build a brick wall.
Yeah. Chunk mapping, mini mapping. The wheels are turning.
Yeah.
No, I love it. This is a big deal, because when people, those are key times when people get stuck, and even if they don't know what the stuckness is, being able to help somewhat identify or get close to, maybe this is it, whatever it is, here's how you could tackle that with your chunk mapping or whatever you'd call it, I know I'm still stuck in it, right?
Yeah, no,
but that's a big deal for solopreneurs. I think that's like a call of the hour for a lot of us, being able to figure that out. It's a pain.
Yeah, I experience it. I experience it, not I used to. It's not something that is, it goes away. It's just that now you have a plan to deal with it.
Right. You can navigate through it. Absolutely. That's good stuff, Monty.
Good stuff. Yeah. Let's see. I was gonna wrap that back around there. I had a quick thought, and then it just flew right out of my head. Yeah.
Came off the map.
It went off the map, off the radar.
Off the radar.
Well, we'll just keep it simple with the whole chunk mapping. We'll come up with maybe that's the one we'll adopt. I don't know. We'll map that out. But the idea is to map things out in smaller chunks. Shorten down the timeline. Oh, here's the analogy. Shorten down the timeline. If you're overwhelmed, I've got the sales page. I've got the emails. I've got the sign up page. I need to make a lead magnet. I need to there's all these things you need to do. It's like, all right, well, let's start identifying some of those. Well, you really don't need the email sequence thing until somebody buys something. All right, well, until so the sales page is more important than that, but you need to get people to the sales page. So perhaps the lead magnet would be the best place to start. So it just
Right.
all depends on the scenario where you're at, what you're trying to accomplish, and then narrow that down. It's like, I don't need to do that right now. Don't even need to worry about it, because until this is done, that can't do anything.
Right.
And sometimes people get stuck on well, I need to do that so that when I get this done, it's ready.
Get stuck on it. Yep.
And there's the what if. What if I did this? What if I didn't have an email responder thing hooked up? And what if I made a sale? What if I would have to manually send them an email? Would that be really that bad? One time for the first sale to send it manually?
Right.
Oh, what if I got 20 sales? You'd be pretty motivated to go ahead and get the email thing done.
Right. Right.
I would be pretty motivated.
Right. No,
It's like, okay, that's that indicator, mapping it out. There's a little flag came up, says me.
Yeah.
Our little crop thing with I'm trying to get in the
other crop.
I noticed my hands have been off the screen because StreamYard has decided to crop us today.
I know we're keeping it simple too, Monty, but one thing I thought about was when, like, what you expressed today, like, you're giving people permission to say, I don't have to go through this big A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. Series of steps, because even when people are taught things online, we're taught to think that way, where it's not always the case for everyone. So being able to break the rule and say, hey, you can do it this way, it gives people a sense of freedom. And that's what people want, a peace of mind, so they can get stuff done, and that can help them get unstuck. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
I like that. Yep, that's definitely a key factor. And then the other side of that I was saying too is that if you get those little things started and something happens, it's super motivating. Momentum. Then suddenly the fog is irrelevant. It's like, oh, now I've got feedback. Like you've said before, always get that feedback. Then that helps guide you.
Right. So yeah, good stuff, man. I'm all freedom, peace of mind. I'm all about that.
Well, if you want to get some more awesome stuff like these chunks that we're creating here, you can join us by going to joinmonty.com. That takes you to the Facebook group that Carl and I are active in and will be more active in. And if you would like to make it more active, your engagement will be motivating. So please, joinmonty.com.
Joinmonty.com.
And until next time, try mapping things out.
Map it out. I wish I could put a calendar come across the screen. Until next time.
Try that. All right. Take her easy. Get under the screen again. You have to get back.
So, there it is.
See you later.
Pretty close.